The third lesson in the character development unit is on admirable people. It took place over 3 to 4 periods because it involved some research which was done at home and individual presentations. We began the lesson with the same reminder. We are exploring our own character and what it means to have good character, to be a person of good character. But we're not only talking about good character, we are also practicing the behaviors of good character when we do the activities. We asked the class, what does it mean to be an admirable person? The answer is something along the lines of being worthy of praise, held in high regard, respected by others. Then we had a little grammar lesson. The students read aloud each version of the word, and then they made a sentence with each. I created a worksheet for this brainstorming exercise. The first question, what makes someone admirable or worthy of admiration, was done individually. We asked the students to make a list of traits. They could refer to their folder to get some ideas from reflections and discussions we had in previous classes. Once each student had a list, they worked in groups of 4 to 5 to compare their lists, identify traits that they had in common, and determine the top 3 to 5 most common or popular traits for their group. Then each group shared their top traits with the class while the teacher recorded them. Once they had a master list, we organized it, putting similar traits together. So for example, caring and compassionate went together, and diligent and hardworking. And then we identified the top 3 to 5 traits for the whole class. And we asked the students, what should we do with this list? Should these traits become our class values? One class decided to make a chart with the values and hang it up on the wall. And then we had a general discussion around these questions. What does it mean when more than one person has the same trait on their list? What is the link between our ideas of admirable people and character traits? If you have class or school rules, you can also discuss how these traits relate to the rules and how the rules might relate to being an admirable person. In other words, connect up all the dots between character traits, behaviors, admirable people, maybe even rules. Finally, we had a student read this quote. When I was young, I admired clever people. Now that I'm old, I admire kind people. And we asked, what do you think Abraham Joshua Heschel meant when he said this? We posed 2 more questions for private reflection. The first, how do I compare to my list of admirable traits? On the individual lists that the students made, they could put a check mark beside the traits they thought applied to them, and think about the traits that didn't apply to them and what they would like to do about that. The second question, do I think others admire me? Why do I think that? You'll notice again the same 2 perspectives, self-knowledge and speculation on the perception of others. These reflections were not shared, but we asked the students to be honest with themselves. To end the first session of Lesson 3, we introduced a project that would require some homework. The project involved identifying someone who they admired and whom others would also find admirable, based on the traits and values we'd been talking about. This person could be fictional or real, someone they knew or have only heard about, or someone famous or not famous. Then they had to do some research on why the person deserves our admiration, with these 2 guiding questions. What character traits, behaviors, or actions make this person admirable? What can we learn from this person about being someone of good character? With this information, they made a poster about their person's character that included a picture of the person and possibly a quote if the person has a saying that reflects their character. We clarified that this is not necessarily about the person's accomplishments. For example, that even if they are the highest goal scorer of all time or they won an award for most sales, doesn't necessarily mean they are a person of good character. It is about character traits. Not all who rise to the top of their profession are admired for their character, so they had to pick someone who actually is admired for their character and focus on their character. We prepared a worksheet with these instructions and room for research notes so that caregivers could provide support as needed. We began the second session of Lesson 3 by sharing some of the people who we admire. As each image appeared, the students identified the person and read the quote, and they suggested why each person was admirable and for which traits. The rest of the session was a work period for the students to turn their research notes into a paragraph, to print the paragraphs and pictures, and to assemble their poster. The third session of Lesson 3 was dedicated to poster presentations. Because our class was small, only 14 students, students presented to the whole class, but you can also have the students present in smaller groups. Before beginning, we repeated the audience behavior reminders. After each presentation, the class asked questions of the presenter. It was sometimes necessary to refocus on character rather than achievements or accomplishments and fame. If students veered toward the latter, we made sure to ask how the accomplishment relates to their character or what it indicates about their character. So for example, the highest goal scorer, that might indicate perseverance, patience. The top salesperson might indicate kindness, responsibility, attentiveness. But they couldn't speculate on that. It had to come out of their research since the task was to select an admirable person based on character. After all the presentations, we talked about traits that these admirable people have in common. And this ends the session and Lesson 3. See the next video in the playlist for Lesson 4.